All right, welcome into Starting Nine here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel on a Monday morning. We'll be with you a little bit more consistently going forward. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick. And at Five Reasons Sports, producer today is Manny Chang. We appreciate his contributions as always. Let me tell you about the two sponsors before we get to some heat conversation here today. Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. NCAA tournament, it's still going on. It's going on in South Florida, basketball town. FAU, Miami are both in there. You can play those teams at Prize Picks. Of course, you can also play the Miami Heat. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. So go to prizepicks.com. Again, use the code 5. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. Also, we want to mention our other sponsor, All Pro Construction Builders. Our friend Danny. Find them over on Instagram at All Pro Construction Builders. But they got a new website that's launching too at allproconstructionbuilders.com. This is where you can get your hurricane windows and all that good stuff. You need to get it over at All Pro Construction Windows. Of course, a little rain today, not going to be a hurricane, but we know in South Florida, hurricane season is always around the corner. So go to All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. Don't see it up there on the screen right now, but we'll on the next show. So All Pro Construction Builders, reach out to Danny, huge Miami Heat fan, and do it through IG. All right, let's get to it. The Miami Heat are chasing the Brooklyn Nets, although I wouldn't really call it a chase. It's kind of a waddle, not like Jalen. I mean, it's like they sort of care about catching them, I guess. It didn't seem like it over the weekend. Lost in Chicago, where you're down 21 points in the first half. The Detroit game, another of those games where it's just kind of like sleepwalk for a while and wait for Jimmy to save them in the last 6 minutes. Tyler helped them a little bit at the end of that game last night, too, obviously. And they win, but that's a team in Detroit that is actually trying to lose. So, you kind of know, like, if you get it to a certain point that they're going to fold at that stage, and that's what they did. But the Heat are not playing well. I mean, I'm not going to take a 12-point win in Detroit as playing well. Again, that game was much more competitive than that throughout. And so I don't trust them, and I don't know that anybody trusts them at this stage to put together a winning streak. I mean, I don't see it coming. They're going into a week now. They've got what are to date their two most important games of the season at home. No excuses. They've got 2 days off. They flew home from Detroit. They're already back in South Florida. They're preparing for a Wednesday game and then a Saturday game. Plenty of time off in between those games. This is a light week, but it's an important week. And if the Heat could be trusted, you would say they would get these two games and put themselves back on track. I do not trust them. You do not trust them, right? A lot of you have tuned them out, honestly. I mean, we're seeing it in our numbers. I don't think we've changed. They've changed. So nobody trusts this team. Like, everybody's checked out on this team. Not everybody, but a lot of people, because there's just a feeling like, okay, they're going to stumble to the play-in, or best case scenario, they get a 6 seed and get blown out by Philadelphia or Boston. Looks like it's going to be one of those teams now because the Celtics are struggling. So actually, Philly could jump all the way up to 2. They're actually right there right now. But nobody trusts this team to make any kind of a meaningful run. And I don't know that they trust themselves. And what's weird to me about them is, for a team that has been so up and down this year, they're arrogant and complacent about certain teams that they play. They would not be in this position without the 2 losses in Charlotte, without the home loss to Detroit, without the home loss to San Antonio, without the road loss in Orlando. These are teams that are not competing for anything. The Heat made it tough against Utah the other day. That team is going the other direction. Look, this is a Heat team, again, that cannot be trusted. They can play to the level of competition sometimes, and they can rise up. We saw it against Boston earlier this season. But for the most part, they play down to the level of competition. And so when you keep playing down to the level of competition, you become that competition. And now they are at a stage, and I said this last night on 5 on the Floor. If you want to check that out, that's on the YouTube channel today, as are new episodes from Defoe's show about the NCAA tournament and the South Florida teams in it, and also Louis Sung on the Dolphins, kind of defying the critics at this point. So check all that out on the YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. But I said this on 5 on the Floor last night. All season long, it has been about trying to keep the game close enough so that when Jimmy comes in with about 6.5 minutes left, he can steal the game. That's basically what they've been doing, or trying to do. And they've won a lot of those clutch games, okay? Well, now the season has become a microcosm of the games. Usually it's the games become the microcosm of the season. No, the season has become a microcosm of the games. The season is in its last 6 minutes. They're waiting for Jimmy to come in and save them. Because I don't trust the others. I don't. And it's crazy to say that because both Bam and Tyler have made strides this season in a lot of ways, but not strides in terms of consistency, particularly after the All-Star break. So you will get a good Tyler game and a good Tyler finish like you got last night, but do you trust it to come the next game? He didn't play well against Chicago. And Bam, he's been fine. But fine was not what we were talking about before the All-Star break. We were talking about somebody who is going from that top 20 range in the league to that top 12 to 13 range in the league. Well, he has not been there since the break. His defense has slipped a little bit. There have been great moments. He saved the game the other night. But he has not been as consistent there. And offensively, it's the struggle to get to his spots, the struggle to be aggressive. It's all back. And that is not where you want it to be. Now, there are some promising things going on before I get into the schedule stuff here, okay? And the promising things that are going on are, it's crazy to say this, is actually Kyle Lowry. And I'm not going to wash away anything I said before or this season or his effect on the salary cap. Look, $28 million, like what he's doing right now does not measure up to that in any way. But I will say it's been better. It's been better, and you can see where he's been needed. And so I'll back off a little bit on some of the criticism because they need him to get them into offense. And he was a plus 27 last night in his minutes. So he was a significant plus. And I know single game plus minus, it can be a little wonky. But when you're a plus 27 in a game that you win by 12, obviously you've done something good while you're on the court for that to be the case. He has been better. And it looks to me like we're setting up for a change in the starting lineup again. Because Gabe has not been consistently good. And so I was in favor of Gabe starting. His defense is still better than Kyle's, even though it hasn't been at the level I think that we all hoped it would be based on his past. But I think you're looking at a starting lineup change soon. And I think if it happens, then you're looking at Lowry going into the starting lineup, and you may be looking at Caleb Love. That's an actual person. Caleb Martin going back to the starting lineup, because I do not believe that you can play Lowry and Love as starters together with Hero. I just think defensively it's going to be ugly, and here's the thing. It's crazy because Caleb has adjusted back to his old role, and he has been, in a lot of ways, the second most consistent player on the Heat since the All-Star break. But I feel like he's going to have to go back to the starting lineup to protect Lowry and guards. And so I would not be shocked if that happens. Now, how does that affect Kevin Love and his minutes? We'll see. Cody Zeller is expected back soon. Yurt has been getting minutes, but has not really distinguished himself in any way. Yurt needed, not just the full training camp, but the full kind of, to play with this team the way that they're playing, he needed a ramp to do it, and he hasn't had one. And then there's the other question. Victor Oladipo is out of the rotation right now. He's out of the rotation. He's healthy enough to play. But it has basically been either Kyle Lowry or Victor Oladipo lately. That's the choice. Now, could that change if Lowry goes back to the starting lineup, that Oladipo gets some of Gabe Vincent's minutes? I think that's very possible. But for right now, with Gabe starting, which means he's going to get minutes, then Lowry coming off the bench, there's no room for Vic. And the reality is Vic kind of shot himself out of this. His shot selection since he came back from the third setback this year has been weird. He has never tried to be a high-volume three-point shooter quite like this. It's almost like he doesn't trust his body, and so he's just chucking from outside, and he's pounding the ball into the ground, and finally, I think Spoelstra just gave up on it for now, even though Vic's defense could be helpful. So we're not going to do a long show today. We are going to do shows throughout the week. Again, I do want to mention All Pro Construction Builders again, and also Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. But I do want to mention one thing before we go here, and this is worth watching. The Heat cannot drop games against bad teams like they almost did last night because the Nets may not give them any wiggle room. I understand that the Nets are not a juggernaut. There's no question. Mikal Bridges has been a revelation. But look, they have a ton of good role players, and they have an interesting future. But they should not be staying above water without Durant and Kyrie, not the way that they were structured this year going into it. And yet they are, and even with the 3-game losing streak lately, they're not playing poorly, okay? I watched them the other night. They're not playing poorly. They're just sort of hitting their ceiling a little bit with this group. but their schedule is soft as hell. I just looked at it. They've got 2 games against Cleveland. The Heat better hope that the Cavs win both those games, because I'm looking at the rest of it. They've got an Orlando in there. They've got a Detroit in there. They've got a Houston in there. They have 2 with one of those teams. They've got a Utah in there, which is actually sort of actively trying to tank now after playing pretty well the whole season and playing better than people expected. So they've got, I counted at least 5 gimme games in there, teams that are trying to lose. So there is a Philadelphia in there. The Heat better hope that they lose to Cleveland twice and they lose to Philly, and maybe they drop one of those games that you don't expect them to drop against one of those lottery teams, and they're going to have to beat Brooklyn head-to-head. That goes without saying. But the Nets may not make this easy because, again, the schedule is soft, and these teams, and we know what happens in the last 10 games of the season. These teams that are in the lottery, they stop with the pretense, and they just tank. They will find, that happened last night, by the way, with Detroit. It happened. Now, we can talk about, the idea of, okay, the Heat did some good things at the end of the game, and they did. But if you watch Detroit, players don't tank. That's not how that works. Management tanks. Coaches kind of tank if they know what management wants, and it comes into substitution patterns and who plays and who doesn't. We saw last night Bogdanovich didn't play. Burks didn't play. That's 2 of their best three-point shooters. Bogdanovich is honestly, at this stage, even with all their first-round picks, is still their best player. And so there were some subtle things that went on last night, and that was definitely helpful in terms of the Heat getting over the hump. So the Heat can't drop games now. They can't drop games. The Heat have to go win 8 out of 10. They got to win 8 out of 10. They got to beat the Nets. They got to beat the Knicks. They cannot have the kind of situation like they had against Chicago the other night. And I know Heat fans are going to say, what's the damn difference? Because you get to the 6, you play Philly, which is hot as hell right now, or you play Boston. I understand that. I know that this has been a disappointing, frustrating season. Trust me, we've struggled to come up with content as the season has worn on. We've been trying to entertain you guys on Playback. You should check that out. You will have fun with us there because we talk about everything but the game. But this season will look a lot better, at least, if you get to the 6 and you have a competitive first-round series, than if you get to the 7 or the 8 and you end up losing to Toronto in a play-in, which is very possible at this stage. All right, thanks to our producer, Manny Chang. We'll do more of these throughout the week. There's Prize Picks. Use that code 5, F-I-V-E. Got that initial deposit matched up to $100. Again, play the NBA, NCAA. There it is. Thanks, Manny. All Pro Construction Builders. Check out, Dan, I'm going to give you the phone number here before we close here. 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. Impact Windows and Doors. Make sure you get them. And here's the thing. I always forget to mention this. 10% discount. I mentioned 5 reasons. 10%. You know those things. Even with as reasonable as they try to make them in all Pro Construction Builders, it can be a little expensive to get your whole house situated here. Protect your house. You see what the houses are worth here in South Florida. You know what the insurance company dealing with it. You'll never get your money. 305-484-4429. 305-484-4429. Based in Miami-Dade, but they also service all the other counties in town, including the one to the south. All right. Full episodes Monday and Tuesday leading up to Heat Knicks. Me, Brady, and Alex at Heat Knicks. Playback for Heat Knicks. We're going to cover this like a playoff week, people, because that may be the only playoff week we see. Have a good day, everybody.